All right, so in Chapter 8 so far, we've talked a lot about percentages. We've talked about certain percentage of an amount. We've talked about sales tax and discount. We've talked about even investing money and earning interest at a certain percent. Well, now let's talk about if we have to pay interest at a certain percent. So a lot of us throughout our life are going to have certain types of loans, maybe a car loan or a house loan, a mortgage, credit cards, other types of loans from banks, right? And so let's talk in the next couple sections about those loans. Let's figure out how to calculate the payment for those loans, and then let's talk about a little bit of interest and how much interest we end up paying when we end up borrowing money. So first, the loan that is paid off with weekly or monthly payments or payments in some other period is called an installment loan. The advantages of doing an installment loan is you get to use the product immediately. For example, in this section, we're going to talk about cars, right? You drive off the lot with your new car, but you haven't paid for it yet, but you get to use it right away. The disadvantage of an installment loan is that interest adds up substantially to the amount of the cost of your car in the end. So you have to be careful with interest and how much you actually pay for your object, whether it's a car, your home, or whatever. A car loan in which you make regular monthly payments is called a fixed installment loan. Normally, you make the same payment every month for a certain amount of years in order to pay off that car. Any fixed installment loan we can find the payment for by using this payment formula. So take a minute, find this formula on your formula sheet, and anytime the question asks you to figure out the payment of a certain loan, this is the formula you're going to use. Now make sure you understand what all the different variables mean. The PMT talks about your payment. The P here is the dollar amount that you've borrowed. The R is the interest rate in decimal form. The N is the number of times of year you're going to make this payment. So the N here, the N here, and the N here, 3 places, are all the same. And normally when we make a payment, we make it every month, so that would be 12 times a year. So the N would be 12. And then you have a T over here, and that represents the number of years you're going to have this loan for. Okay? All right, let's start off with this example. We have example number 3 here. We're comparing 2 different car loans. It says you decide to take a $20,000 loan for a new car. You can select one of the following loans, each requiring regular monthly payments. You can have loan A or you can choose loan B. Loan A is a 3-year loan at 7%. So the interest rate is lower than loan B, but you have to pay it off in a faster period of time. Loan B gives you 5 years to pay it off, but the interest rate is 9%. Part A of this problem asks us to find the regular payment, the monthly payment, and the total interest that you paid for loan A. Part B asks us to find the same thing, but for loan B, the monthly payment and the total interest. Let's do one at a time. So if I go back to loan A, remember this is a 3-year loan at 7%. The first thing they ask us to find is the monthly payment. So I'm going to go back up to the formula for payment. I'm going to plug in all of the information. The amount that I borrowed, the interest rate as a decimal, the number of times a year I'm going to make this payment, and for how many years am I going to pay this loan for. Why don't you pause the video, take that formula, and plug in all of those different values and make sure you've filled it out right. All right, so we borrowed $20,000 for this new car. The interest rate was 7%, so I plugged it in as a decimal of 0.07. I'm going to make this payment every month, so that's 12 times a year. In my denominator, I have the 1 minus 1 plus 0.07 over 12 to the negative 12 times 3 because I'm going to pay this off over a 3-year period. At this point, we have to put this in our calculator. Now, here's the tricky part. All of our calculators might be a little bit different. So it's really important that you take the time right now to understand how to put it in your calculator correctly so that when it comes to test day, you know how to input it correctly and you get the right answer. So I'll show you a couple different calculators that I have. One is a scientific calculator I borrowed from my daughter, and then another one is a graphing calculator. So here we go. Let's go ahead and put this into our calculator. So hopefully you can see this. I know this isn't very high tech, but here we go. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to do 20,000. I'm going to do parentheses 0.07 divided by 12 parentheses, and then I'm going to push equal. That's my numerator. Now I still have to divide it by parentheses 1 minus parentheses 1 plus 0.07 divided by 12 parentheses, and then I have to raise it to that negative 36 power. So on your calculator, you have to find your negative button. That's different than your minus button. So on this calculator, my negative button is right here. So I'm going to do raise to, and so on this calculator, you've got to find how you put an exponent in. Sometimes the calculators have what's called a caret, so it kind of looks like an arrow pointing up. So depending on your calculator, you've got to find your exponent button. Mine is right here, so I'm going to say raised to, and do you see how it pops up to the top? Negative 36. That's the 12 times the 3. I'm going to use my arrows to scroll back down, and I'm going to end my parentheses. Okay, I'm going to push enter, and I ended up getting $617.54 if I was rounding to the nearest cent. My payment every month will be $617.54. All right, try it on your calculator. That was with a scientific calculator. Here's a graphing calculator. I'll put it in this one also so you can see the difference. I'm going to do the 20,000 parentheses 0.07 divided by 12, enter, that's my numerator, divided by parentheses 1 minus parentheses 1 plus 0.07 divided by 12 parentheses. And then I've got to raise it, and so on this calculator, my exponent button is here. It's called a caret. So I'm going to raise it to the negative 36 power. So I'm going to find my negative button. Again, that's different than your minus button, so my negative button is down here, negative 36. You notice that I multiplied the 12 times the 3 and put it in as a 36 to make sure that my calculator was doing it correctly. So I highly suggest you do that as well. I'm going to finish with my parentheses. I'm going to push enter, and I should get the same amount, $617.54. So please make sure that you've played with your calculator. You know how to input it correctly so that you can get the correct answers on all of these types of problems. Okay? All right, let's go back to that problem. Remember, our payment was $617.54. So that's our monthly payment every month for the next 3 years if I choose loan A. Now, the second part of the question asks us for the total interest that we end up paying. After those 3 years are done, how much did we pay for the car and how much did we actually pay in interest? Well, we know the car is $20,000, right? But if I make a payment of $617.54 every month for 3 years, how much total do I end up paying? Well, let's do it. Let's take that payment of $617.54. Let's multiply it by 12 because I'm going to make it every month. That's 12 times a year. And then let's multiply it by 3 because I'm going to do that for 3 years. I end up getting a total of $22,231.44. At the end of the 3 years, that's how much total I've paid to the bank. Now, the car only cost $20,000, right? And so how much then would I pay in just interest? Well, if I paid a total of over $22,000 and the car only cost $20,000, then that means I paid $2,231.44 in just interest. I paid an extra $2,200 to the bank so that I can borrow money from them in order to get this car. All right, let's do the same thing, but with loan B. Remember, loan B is for 5 years at 9%. Why don't you pause the video and try to do the same thing, but this time for loan B. Find me the monthly payment and then figure out how much total interest you ended up paying for this car if you chose loan B. All right, inputting my values into my payment formula, this time with a 9% and this time for 5 years. Your setup should look like this. It is really important that I can see your setup when you're doing your exam so I know exactly what you're putting in and where you're getting your values from. So I'm looking for this setup to give you full credit. From there, you're going to use your calculator, make sure you're inputting it correctly, and you should end up getting $415.17. Your monthly payment, if you choose Loan B, is $415.17. If you pay $415.17 every month for 5 years this time, you're going to end up paying a total of $24,910.20. Remember, the car was only $20,000. So that means you paid over $4,900 in interest to your bank. You paid $4,910.20 extra in interest. So what's the difference between Loan A and Loan B? Or why would you choose one over the other? Well, the last part of the question asks us to compare the monthly payments and the total interest for the two loans. So if you look back at Loan A, remember our monthly payment was really high, $617, versus Loan B, which is only $415. So if you're strapped for cash or you can't afford a $600 a month payment, then you would probably go with Loan B because it has a lower monthly payment. However, what's the downfall of Loan B? Well, you end up paying a lot more money in interest in Loan B to have that lower monthly payment. So when I go to compare these two loans, Loan A gives me a higher payment, but I end up paying less overall. Loan B gives me a lower monthly payment, a little more affordable in the short term, but I end up paying a lot more money in the end. So you've got to be careful on your term, how long the loan is for, and your interest. You might have a low payment, and that's probably what they'll try to sell you on, as they won't talk about how much you're going to end up paying for your car in the end. They're just going to talk to you about your low monthly payment they can get you. But you got to be careful. You end up paying a lot more if you choose Loan B than Loan A.